Good evening. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to attend tonight's meeting. For the record, it's July 18th, 2024, and the time is 6:30 p.m. I'll begin with the roll call, so council, when I call your name, please say here or present. Mayor Maxton.
Here.
Councilmember Stroop.
Here.
Roden.
Here.
Olvera.
Here.
Kerner.
Here.
Parker.
Here.
And Menchow.
Present.
With 7 members of council present, a quorum is declared.
Thank you, Christina. Would everybody please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all, and thanks everybody for attending tonight's meeting. As a reminder to everybody, we do live broadcast these meetings and would like to welcome those that are joining us by the live broadcast. If you do get an opportunity to speak as part of the meeting, I would ask that everybody that is here in the audience that you would use the microphone that's at the podium here. And the reason for that is that the individuals that are watching us on the live broadcast cannot hear the comments unless they're made through the microphone at the podium. And if you do get an opportunity to speak, I'd ask that you introduce yourself and state whether you're a Fair Oaks Ranch resident or what county you live in, and if you're with a business, what business that you are here from. And with that, we'll move on to our citizens and guest forum tonight. We had one individual that signed up, Christine Graham.
Thank you. Good evening, Council and Mayor. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you. You have difficult volunteer positions that require you to be the ears and the eyes for all the residents, and that's not an easy task. I have 2 items I'd like to address. The first is the possible closing of Noble Lark. This may be good for the residents on Noble Lark, but what about the other Fair Oaks Ranch residents, such as in Front Gate? Their private roads are erroneously being used by those looking to get to and from Van Rob. What happens when the gates at Front Gate are permanently closed? Will the city reimburse the Front Gate community to repair their private roads from all the traffic that was diverted through their streets? What about the Fair Oaks Ranch residents that live along Old Fredericksburg Road? How will their safety be addressed? It doesn't matter who has financial responsibility of the Old Fred Road, but the city of Fair Oaks Ranch should be just as concerned with these residents as you are with those on Noble Lark. Does Bernie ISD not bear any responsibility when opening a new school to determine if the road structure is adequate for the expected enrollment, or is that up to the city in which the school is being built? What happens if Bernie ISD changes the school boundary and Noble Lark children now have to go to Van Rob? Closing just one road will have severe financial and safety consequences overall that the city should be prepared for. Before you pass any ordinance, I would ask that you please consider all Fair Oaks Ranch resident safety and the real costs associated with doing so. Thank you. My other item is on the Civic Center. It's been a hot topic for several years now. On April 16th of 2020, when this item came up for discussion to approve a professional service agreement, it was stated the original intent of the project was to renovate portions of City Hall and the former police department building collectively, with an end goal of optimizing workspace for staff and city council, improving building security, and enhancing the customer service experience for our citizenry. Based on a series of operational programming meetings with staff, inclusive of evaluating community civic needs, it was determined the renovation project should be modified to include the design and construction of a civic multi-purpose center. The annual budget fiscal year, October 2020 through September 2021, page 15 states, the overall objective being a design that builds a functional and attractive building that provides space for the city's administrative and public meetings, simultaneously providing a welcoming environment for the Fair Oaks Ranch residents to host their own meetings and events. I understand there have been some changes along the way, and at some point it was decided that City Council would meet in the new Civic Center. However, I do not recall that the space for residents to hold meetings and events would be done away with. For the city to build a big one-room event center that holds up to 200 people with limited parking and no meeting rooms for residents to host meetings or smaller events goes against the original intent discussed in 2020, and in my opinion, does not meet the real needs of the residents of our community. I would ask council to reconsider building an event center that is only geared toward big events and not residents' needs that would accommodate smaller meeting groups. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Mrs. Graham was the only one that signed up for citizens to be heard. Is there anybody here that didn't get an opportunity to sign up that would like to speak? Yes, sir.
How are you? Josh Cook. I'm a resident of Fair Oaks Ranch. Member of the Woods, or the Woods Development. And, I just want to thank you all for us having the opportunity to sit here and speak a little bit about what's going on here. My main topic for the day is also the closure of Noble Ark. I have three main takeaways that I wanted to kind of share with everybody here. Noble Ark traffic is really a symptom of not enough capacity on Eastern Dietz Elkhorn. It's not really, that's the main issue. This is a symptom. So I don't think we should really be treating a symptom. The citizens of Fair Oaks should be able to use the public right-of-way on the street, or the citizens demanding the closure should either pay to take it private, or should move to a street that is on a cul-de-sac or dead end. And I'll share a few more details around that because there's some statistics around when they purchased it, what they knew when they purchased their properties. And we were informed that this was going to be a data-driven decision, but the report was either, from the engineering group was incomplete at best, and it felt too narrow to really encompass the full analysis. So from my perspective, I'd like to request and engage in a constructive workshop, because I know last week, it seemed like, or the last meeting, seemed like it was quickly added. We want to get some questions answered from the report that includes the contractor, the residents, and the city around the potential closure of Noble Ark. My perspective is workshops involve all the interested parties around the subject. They're not just a presentation without questions from all parties. You all, and I believe everyone's pretty well aware that several neighborhoods have an issue with the closure. And it seems a bit, dishonest to quickly schedule a workshop without a more widely distributed notification, similar to what I'm going to mention here in a little bit, to all residents within Fair Oaks Ranch. We were told that the workshop was going to happen in April or May, but then never happened, and all of a sudden it seemed like it was quickly added to the agenda with a full report, without a full distribution, not a full notice, and then in prime vacation period, and then you had the break after with the July 4th. So here's the questions that I think should be answered before any votes are taken by the city. Did you reach out to all HOA presidents to inform them of the upcoming workshop? The city appears to take other closures quite seriously, in that it provides plenty of information notifications around the potential closures. See the sewer closure, CPS power down, the seal coat closures. Why wasn't the discussion of Noble Ark treated very similarly? To get feedback from all the residents. As we sought out answers, the initial reasoning for the closure, the timing, the general awareness of the closure were very inconsistent. And as I've brought this up to more neighbors, more people, more individuals, I get a very negative reaction, other than the few folks that live on that particular street, because it makes an issue. So I'm going to go through quite a bit here. So the first takeaway, traffic on Noble Ark is a symptom of a separate issue. Families can't efficiently drop off and pick up their children at Van Robb Elementary School due to the bottleneck on the western end of Dietz Elkhorn, thus forcing them to find other means to do so. In reviewing the report and the video and the recent contractor presentation, it appears the analysis was incomplete at best, or the scope was very, very intentionally narrow. It appears the question was, How do we reduce traffic on Noble Ark? The real question, what do you think the result would have been? How do we improve ingress and egress to Van Robb Elementary School? Think about that for a moment. Was that question answered through the presentation the other day? I don't believe it was. Now, there's a few observed deficiencies and open questions. The trip times that were presented appeared shorter, and the contractor did not present the alternative route differences in presentation. He selectively noted that it was 30 seconds of additional time added for the Fair Oaks route in the presentation, but he did not note the increased trip times due to taking an alternative route via Fair Oaks Parkway from the south versus having to go through Noble Ark or going around Detail Corn. Our times showed no shorter than 3 minutes and 30 seconds longer in just one direction, 7 minutes of round trip. Most mornings, it included a 10 to 25 car backup at the stop sign of Detail Corn and Fair Oaks Parkway in the mornings. We have questions around how the route times incorporate the often 20 to 25 car backups at the stop sign on Fair Oaks Parkway. The pre-closure is based on 2021 data through simulations, and we have some questions around the simulation assumptions. My time recording of each additional car to go through the stop sign was an additional 7 seconds per car to get through that. The result was an additional 1 minute and 10 seconds to nearly 3 minutes of additional time just for the south approach. We often saw 10 to 15 cars backed up on the west approach in the intersection for the return trip. Another 1 minute, 10 seconds to 1 minute and 45 seconds extra. The north approach also had 10 to 15 cars backed up each morning, every day. This results in a range of 7 to 12 minutes of additional time that wasn't represented within the route times by the contractor. So I feel like that's an incomplete data set based on our review. The western Elkhorn traffic increase seems incomplete. Did we evaluate expanding the road on the west side? He didn't present how many cars were using the cut through on Noble Ark pre-closure. We've had some estimates, but there was no concrete data within the report. Were there actual time to dollar estimates, the time value of money? That's the biggest one for, I think, all of us. Time is money. Nobody wants to waste time in the morning if they don't have to. Since you can't go through Noble Ark, you have to find different delays. The statistics for Fair Oaks Ranch average income, household income is $150,000 per year. What's the salary for a mom estimated to be? $185,000 per year. For every mom that has to be delayed, that's $1.58 per minute for every mom that has to go through that drop-off. That's 1,260 to 2,160 minutes per school year of delays for each parent, or $1,990 or $3,400 of additional time for each parent throughout the school year. $3,400 it costs some of us, just for the delays on a cost per year. Gas, another $220 that's going to be cost a lot of us out of pocket to make that additional 1.5 mile each way, sometimes twice a day. Using 250 round trips per day, noted by Mayor Maxton, 500 total trips for a parent, all parents, all adding up, taking that trip, that's almost $500,000 to $850,000 per year of delays for all parents having to route around Noble Ark. I'll go into the value of the right-of-way and how much that's valued here in a little bit. There are no notes around the resulting backups and delays to exit the school circle drive, especially in the mornings, and how it is now worse due to most cars now having to take a left turn out of the school drive. The aerials that were in the package, they do not present the backup that occurs each morning. Every aerial presented a near empty school loop, which is not the case every day. If you go there in the morning, you'll see it. And I know, Mr. Maxton, we saw you there a couple of times, so thank you for showing up and taking a look. But some days were better than others, but most days it was jam-packed. Why is it that the aerials never showed the backup from the school door all the way out the entrance to the stop sign in the morning? Didn't see a one. And why only the PM aerials had timestamps? The AMs did not. So therefore, what time did they take the aerials for those AM on those AM pieces? My thought, the PM is the lighter traffic time, so that's the one that they were more willing to show, where they may have moved around the timestamp on the morning aerials. What are the time variances for the increased time to navigate the school loop before and after the closure? Didn't see that answered in the report either. What was the increase in tardies due to congestion getting into the school because of the new congestion? Per the school newsletter on March 9th, tardies had dramatically increased, and they were running at 50 to 75 per day after the road closure. That ruins the morning for every mom, every parent trying to get in and out of school, because then they have to get out of the car, they got to take their kid in because they were tardy, because they couldn't get into the school because of the backup, because most people are coming in one direction now. You know, that's 10% of the school every day tardy because they can't get in to the school. The report did not mention the impacts on trip times using golf carts versus cars. We're in a golf cart community. You should be able to freely move throughout the neighborhood using a golf cart. You know, the max golf cart speed is usually around 18 miles an hour. A golf cart now takes an extra 5 minutes each way to complete the round trip. 10 minutes of added time by having to go through detail corn. When a golf cart travels on detail corn, all traffic behind them has to slow down. They can't, to accommodate the reduced speed. Cars cannot pass on a yellow line. They're not supposed to. Some people might do it. You know, we live in a golf cart community, and it appears we are trying to add complications so that some members of the community cannot freely move throughout the city efficiently in their golf carts. A golf cart cannot take the western route, as they are now allowed on the I-10 access road. And cutting through private property at Fair Oaks Village and CVS, not a realistic solution. What can be done through the cars that are cutting through Parker's lot at the stop sign? I saw no mention of that. We saw an average of 2 a day cutting through because they were on Fair Oaks Parkway, then cutting through Parker's to get, I'm assuming, to Fair Oaks Ranch Elementary. What outreach was undertaken to present the full impact to Frontgate, Elkhorn Ridge, Enchanted Oaks, and the woods at Fair Oaks? I don't feel like that, you know, that's an open question. That's why I would like to have a full dialogue with a workshop and delay this ordinance. The contractor noted the school backup was cleared in 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, why is that not simple logic used for arguing to keeping Noble Ark open? If that clears in 5 to 10 minutes, that street probably, those backups probably clear in 5 to 10 minutes. So what's the issue? You know, they minimized the clearing of the traffic at Detail Corn, but they didn't minimize the traffic on Noble Ark. You know, what's the cost to expand Detail Corn to 4 lanes west of the school? This will allow for a double turn lane left out of the school to ease traffic. Because that's the main issue, is people turning left. And the backup starts and goes all the way from the door, all the way to the door of the school, all the way around, and so there was no addressing of that. So noted concerns that I've heard through the community, both here and throughout, you know, road maintenance. You know, we got feedback that increased traffic did not have issues with the road conditions. Maintenance was a non-factor on the additional road maintenance that was needed during the recent road dealings with the fog seal and everything. You know, what's the value of that public right-of-way? What's it all the way through? Because that strip of land takes away all the value of that public right-of-way. Taking away that small strip of land essentially makes the private road, thus the whole neighborhood should probably pay for the additional time they're causing other families within Fair Oaks Ranch. Assuming a 20-year payback, it seems a minimum of $10 million, with the midpoint using what I mentioned earlier, $13.5 million paid to taxpayers to take away that little strip of the right-of-way. So then that way, you know, that's what we as a community are losing. Safety. Safety's brought up. There's bus stops on just about every street in Fair Oaks. Should we close all streets with bus stops? Perhaps adjust the bus stop location on this particular street? Can we add sidewalks to that specific neighborhood? Perhaps widen that particular street? Make it safer, make it handle the traffic.
Hey, Mr. Cook, are you winding
Yep,
it up?
I got 1 page left.
All right.
Young kids in the neighborhood. All reasonable parents should be watching their children and keeping them out of the street. There's plus or minus 100 cars per day that pass my house in a private gated community on an off Main Street path, and we manage it from a safety perspective. You know, Monument Oak in our neighborhood is probably 3 times that amount. There should be no surprise to the residents on the street that there's going to be traffic there. BISD has owned that land since 2005. 13 of the 21 households along that corridor bought their houses since BISD has owned that land. It was purchased in 2005. Most had ample time to vet the issue prior to purchasing their houses. 10 houses were purchased when Van Rob was in planning, under construction, or after the school was opened. The school was not a secret. Additionally, that street has been available to the public since whenever Fair Oaks was founded, so why take it away now? So in conclusion, with all of these observations, questions, it would be prudent to set up a true workshop so the residents can engage with the contractor and the city. The contractor didn't address so many of the other concerns, and the report should have been more broadly distributed for review prior to spending taxpayer dollars on an unnecessary ordinance to close a street for a nuisance more than an actual need, because the true need, the scope of the report was too narrow, and that it appears to have asked to solve a symptom of a larger issue that is a traffic squeeze of parents trying to get their children to and from school. There is not enough capacity on Western Dietz Elkhorn. The closing of Noble Ark will increase that traffic pressure. Solve the traffic pressure there, and there's no cars cutting through Noble Ark. Closing Noble Ark fixes a symptom but doesn't fix the true issue. The city of the residents of Noble Ark seems like they're purposely worsening the experience of Van Robb Elementary for residents of Fair Oaks, employees of the school, and other non-residents that are forced to go to the school in our city. It seems we aren't welcoming outsiders. If the district was set up properly, the residents of Noble Ark would be sending their kids to the closest elementary school, not one on the other end of Dietz Elkhorn. This would certainly change their mind, but we're not here to refight issues that have already been decided long ago. This closely smells, of some sort of an elitism, folks caring only for themselves and not trying to solve an issue for the entire community. Should we make all streets with bus stops have no right-of-ways? Should all streets be one way in and one way out so that a resident in Fair Oaks has no cars passing through, no residents at all, doesn't have to have a single car passing by their house? Should the only way to move through the city to use Fair Oaks and Dietz Elkhorn? We're all Fair Oaks residents. We should constructively search for a solution to the real problem. Let's fix the egress to one of Fair Oaks' fine elementary schools in Van Robb, and not penalize the parents that are just trying to start and end their days by adding an unneeded pressure when they're taking their kids to school. And with that, thank you. And how long was that? Do we know? That's probably about the time it takes us to take our kids to school in the morning. Do you want to have to go through that every single day? So you would rather cut that short, correct? So thank you all. I appreciate it. And I would like to have a workshop set up and delay.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Is there anybody else that didn't get an opportunity to sign up that would like to speak? Okay, I have 2 letters that were submitted and asked to be read as part of citizens to be heard this evening. The first letter is from Snehal Patel, who is a Fair Oaks Ranch resident, and she writes, "Dear City Manager and Council, this week my family and I drive back to Fair Oaks Ranch from the northbound I-10 frontage road. Traffic due to construction on the parkway near CVS is detoured past the parkway to the Old Fredericksburg Road and down Dietz Elkhorn with a picture attached and back to the parkway. At Leslie Pfeiffer Drive, touted by you all as another gateway into Fair Oaks Ranch and your basis for the monument placement, and which is the most direct way back into the Fair Oaks Parkway, has no detour sign at the turnoff. There is a tiny sign set up way further down the road that was shared with me by the city instructing folks to use Leslie Pfeiffer, but it is also so small and so far from the turnoff so as to be completely inadequate in providing notice to motorists. From my observations, there's an increased load on the Old Fredericksburg, Dietz Elkhorn that is completely unnecessary. I personally saw many cars that came from the south and took the long detour. Moreover, the city has fawn signs up for us to take care of wildlife along Dietz Elkhorn Road, yet the city actions are to the contrary. I also saw people driving into the Frost Bank and then having to do U-turns. Lots of unsafe practices with many confused motorists, and more importantly, the increased traffic load from the south is a complete disregard to those living off Old Fredericksburg and Dietz Elkhorn. On Tuesday morning, I asked City to rectify this immediately for the traffic coming from the south on the frontage road, but as of Wednesday, no action was taken, and I was told that the parkway would be open by Thursday, thus making my point moot. I still ask my comments to be read aloud and ask the city to review their sign size and placement decisions for detours, and as more construction projects are undertaken to ensure future diversions are placed with regard to public safety and care for the community. And a second point, I ask the council to reconsider and table item 11 relating to Noble Ark closing. A city has the power to pass ordinances, but remember, an ordinance cannot be unreasonable, arbitrary, or an abuse of police power. Based on my legal and regulatory experience and looking at the agenda packet, I would submit the ordinance and your justification do not meet these minimum thresholds. Moreover, what Noble Ark faces is unfortunately not unique, and countless residents and cities have approached their local governments to take action for similar conditions, myself included in Houston. Reasonable decision makers do not arbitrarily jump to closing entire streets without properly considering and weighing other less draconian and more practical and cost-effective alternatives, and without bias or self-interest toward a particular solution. Fair Oaks has limited high-traffic volume streets, and to use the city's rationale about directing traffic through connector streets, many streets could be closed to through traffic. That would be entirely an absent result. In conclusion, the last recital in the ordinance has a typo and is missing the word interest after best in the best of public, of safety and well-being, and that really says it all. Whose best interest is it to close this street? And signed best, Snehal R. Patel, Juris Doctor and Master of Public Affairs. And she includes longtime resident of 8527 Aladar Circle, former 5-year council member of Fair Oaks Ranch who proactively initiated many action items to include detailed core and traffic study, BISD liaison, and code of conduct, former mayoral candidate and expert on complex regulatory and transportation issues. The second letter I have is from Miss Jerry Pieper, and she writes, and she is a Fair Oaks Ranch resident. This past Friday morning at roughly 7:55 a.m., I encountered a cyclist taking full advantage of the Battle Intense Hill. Had I stopped, checked left and right, and then proceeded through, this cyclist would surely have been severely injured or killed, as it would have been impossible for her to stop. But knowing the issues with the intersection, I took a second look to my right before proceeding on to Battle Intense, for which I will be forever grateful. Even now as I write this, I'm pulling my heart out of my throat thinking this could have ended in tragedy. I did not intend to write this email, but I can't shake how devastating this incident was to me and could have been to the cyclists. Please reconsider your response to not placing the stop sign on Battle Intense. I do not have to live on this street to know the dangers it possesses, and I would be remiss if I did not speak out. That completes the comments that we have for citizens and guest forum tonight. And with that, we'll move on. We have one presentation tonight. It's a big presentation. And I think I'm turning this over to Joanna.
Thank you, Mayor. So tonight, I am excited to recognize Miss Amanda Wade, if you will join me up here to my left. Amanda Wade was recognized as our most recent quarter employee of the quarter for quarter 3 for the months of April, May, and June. Amanda originally started with us in July of 2023, so she has recently hit a year with us. And during this nomination, of course, this nomination process is through her peer recognition. And so she was nominated in recognition of a task that she took on that was brought up by our CIAC. So during one of their regular meetings, they were looking at this spreadsheet that contained total number of lots, vacancies, build-out numbers, and from what I'm told, it was a behemoth of a spreadsheet that may not necessarily have been very clear or easy to use or read. And upon hearing about this, Amanda took the initiative to kind of investigate this spreadsheet, and she kind of determined that there was some inaccurate information that really just needed to be recreated and revamped. And she took on this role to better help the utilization for what this project was for. And she documented basically that the information that was in there could be better shown in a map version. And through this, she worked diligently from November through June of this year to help create this map, and it improved the accuracy, streamlined the processes, And she even took that on to coordinate with other staff to make sure that it was as useful and productive as possible, taking on feedback, making changes and revisions, and then eventually getting it incorporated with the new future land use map. So having done all of that, gone really above and beyond to take a process that affected one of our boards and commissions and turning it into something that not only they could use, but that we could use in other areas as well, is really why her peers nominated her for Employee of the Quarter this go around. And it was that drive and that initiative not to just take it and improve it, but really to fix it and just make it something that it had turned into completely different. So please join me in congratulating Amanda on being this quarter's employee winner. And if we could get Amanda's daughter up here, she came to watch her mom receive this award. We're going to get her in the picture as well. Perfect. Thank you, Amanda.
Congratulations, Amanda.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move on to our consent agenda for this evening. We have 5 items on the consent agenda tonight. The first is approval of the June 20th, 2024 regular City Council meeting minutes. Second is approval of the second reading of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Fair Oaks Ranch, Texas, establishing a Transportation Safety Advisory Committee, amending the city's Code of Ordinances, Chapter 1, Article 1.08, Boards, Commissions, and Committees. Third item on the consent agenda is approval of a resolution adopting the Fair Oaks Ranch Transportation Safety Advisory Committee Rules of Procedure. Fourth, approval of a resolution authorizing the city manager to sign an interlocal agreement with the City of San Antonio for the designation of a city's health authority. And last, approval of a resolution authorizing the execution of an agreement with Patty Engineering for water well electrical improvements. Is there any council member that would like to remove any item from consent to consideration? Then with that, could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move.
From Laura, and a second.
Second.
Chesley, all in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda is approved. We have 2 items on for consideration and discussion tonight. The first item is consideration and the possible action approving a resolution authorizing the execution of a work authorization with Pape Dawson Engineers for engineering services for the Dietz Elkhorn East Reconstruction Project. And Grant, you're going to kick this off?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Grant Watanabe, the Public Works Director for the city, and I am presenting a resolution authorizing the execution of a work authorization with Pape Dawson for engineering services for the Dietz Elkhorn East Reconstruction Project. So back in July of 23, the city executed a work authorization with Pape Dawson for the first half of engineering services, which we referred to as schematic design. That scope is substantially complete and included surveying, geotechnical investigation, preliminary engineering, and schematic design for several roadway and multimodal transportation options. Those options included the addition of wider shoulders, a sidewalk, a shared use path, and a combined use path. And the consultant also provided support to the August 2023 Town Hall meeting, which featured this project as one of the topics. Once option 1, which was reconstruction with wider shoulders, was selected, staff and our GEC started negotiations for the second half of engineering services. This half includes roadway design, drainage analysis, utility coordination, bid, and construction phase services in support of option 1. It also includes 1 public meeting prior to contractor mobilization to inform residents, the school district, and other stakeholders of the project schedule, traffic control plan, detour routes, and the primary points of contact. Attached to this agenda item is a letter from our GEC recommending that we accept the consultant's revised proposal as fair and reasonable. Also attached is a copy of the draft work authorization and a copy of the consultant's proposal. Now, based on the schedule included in the consultant proposal, final design is expected to be completed in February of '25, with the project being bid in the March 2025 timeframe. This would allow construction to start in May of '25 once the school year lets out. And the timeline also allows residents and Fair Oaks Ranch Elementary School staff and families to become familiar with the Deets Elkhorn Lane closures and detour routes prior to the start of the next school year. So the city has budgeted $509,429 for the project this fiscal year. This current budget is adequate to cover the costs of the remaining schematic design services issued in the previous work authorization, as well as the cost of this new work authorization. And with that, that's the end of my presentation. Take any questions that you might have.
Questions?
I just have one. Grant, so will there be any other design or engineering services needed, or will this take it through construction
This will
of the
take
road?
it through the end of construction.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Grant, quick question. So on the design of the road, we're looking at the reconstruction of the current road that's there with 5-foot shoulders on each side of the road.
That is correct, Mayor.
Okay. Anything else? Any questions from anyone here tonight on the topic? All right, then, could I get a motion from council to approve a resolution authorizing the execution of work authorization with Pape Dawson Engineers Incorporated for engineering services for the Deets Elkhorn East Reconstruction Project for $285,220 with a 5% contingency in the amount of $14,261 for a total value not to exceed $299,481. Expenditure of the required funds and execution of all applicable documents by the city manager.
So moved.
From Keith, and a second. From Scott. Any other discussion from council? All in favor of approval of the approval of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. Thank you all. And we'll move on to our second consideration item tonight, which is consideration and possible action on the first reading of an ordinance closing the intersection of Noble Lark Drive and Deets Elkhorn Road to vehicular traffic. Grant, you were going to kick this one off too?
I will, thank you, Mayor. So going back to our June 20th City Council meeting, the staff and our city's general engineering consultant presented a summary of the Noble Lark Drive closure analysis. That presentation and report covered or included traffic count results at various locations along with pre and post travel times, some drone footage, the pros and cons of various alternatives. I think there were a total of 5, and some reasons for recommending closure. Now, during discussion, the options were narrowed down to 2. One was the permanent closure, and the other was a right turn only. And at the end of discussion, City Council directed staff to present an ordinance closing the access to and from Noble Lark from Deets Elkhorn. So the draft ordinance is attached to this agenda item. If it is approved, staff will return to council with several closure options and costs associated with them.
Okay. Any questions for Grant? Mr. Cook, I appreciate your comments too, and thank you for being here tonight. From my perspective, we do have increased traffic on Noble Lark and Calcalo due to the use of the roads as being used as cut-throughs from Fair Oaks Parkway to Deets Elkhorn Road. And I agree that there is a problem and that this impacts the residents who live on Noble Lark and Calcalo. I also believe that it presents a safety issue for those residents that live there. Noble Ark and Calcala residents have roads that it's winding, they're fairly narrow roads, they have no shoulders, and just past the edge of the road is the drainage areas. A lot of people do use the cut-through. It's primarily used by school traffic for the mornings and in the evenings. And we had numbers from, you're correct, we don't have precise numbers, but the numbers did range from somewhere from 125 cars up to 250 cars using it in the morning or in the afternoon as part of the cut-through with school traffic. I do believe that this presents a safety issue for those residents. I don't totally disagree with permanently closing the Noble Ark access to the Dietz Elkhorn Road. At this point right now, I just don't believe it is the right option that we should be looking at. And I believe that we should be looking at other alternatives, possibly some traffic calming devices that could be used on Noble Ark and Calcalo to manage the traffic through that neighborhood. Grant mentioned that we were presented with several options. We did narrow it down to 2, but I'm not sure that we ever looked at opportunities where we could provide traffic calming devices. And right now I don't know if we defer this, or from my perspective, if we would defer this decision until later till we could do maybe further analysis to determine what traffic calming devices could do. I don't have all the answers of what those are, but as a option that could be presented to this would be lowering the speed limit on Calcalo and Noble Ark roads to, say, 20 miles per hour, and then putting a 3-way stop at the intersection of Calcala and Noble Ark. Now, what would this do? It's a lower cost option, number one. I look at it and it does leave the roads open. And so it provides that opportunity that the roads can still be used. It makes them available for all emergency vehicles. And by lowering the speed limit, I believe it provides a safer environment for those vehicles that are traveling Noble Ark and Calcalo, safer environment for the residents who live there. And possibly by doing all this, we may deter some traffic away from using those roads, which may end up providing lesser amount of traffic than we were seeing, and maybe splitting it up between Old Fred Road, Fair Oaks Parkway, and the cut-throughs that are currently being used. I use this as an example from my perspective of the way I look at it right now, that maybe we should do some more analysis before making a final decision on what I believe closing the road should be the last option that we're driven to, that there's no other options that we could do. And so at the point I'm at right now, I don't feel that I could vote to approve this measure that's being presented to us tonight. And that's just for me.
Mayor, do you move to postpone? Because we don't have a motion on the table right now
Right.
to even talk about.
Well, we're just putting comments out. I did not make that motion, no.
I'll move to defer the voting on the ordinance.
Removing to table?
Right.
Postpone.
Postpone.
I'll second the motion for discussion.
Okay.
Would the street remain closed or open while we do further analysis?
Open.
That's an operational decision because we didn't vote to close it.
Greg, can I say something?
So right now we have a motion on the table to postpone.
I have
this-
a question on the motion. Is it to postpone indefinitely or a set time to another meeting? Normally you have a time span when you postpone.
So I guess my intent here is I agree with Greg. I'm not in favor of closing Noble Ark, but what I would like to see is what are the other options? Because I personally have talked to other folks about other options that I feel are very viable options that allow the road to stay open. So I think that we need to postpone it long enough to allow us to collect data, just like we did with the closure, the temporary closure. If we decide to do something like what Greg has suggested with, you know, a stop sign or lowering the speed limit, let's do that for, you know, X amount of time, get what the data is on that, see if that solves our problems without having to go to the, you know, very extreme option of closing the road, and then go from there. So I don't know what that time frame would be, but I would say long enough to collect more data from other options that allow us to have the road stay open. Long-winded answer.
I think what I would propose is you just lay it on the table. It sounds like you don't intend to bring it back, which is what you want to vote for. So I would recommend you make that motion, because I can't vote to postpone with no knowledge of the timeline. But I would prefer that if you don't want this ordinance and you want more work, more study, we have a committee that we just formed
Right.
that is designed to do this and have those workshops and have those detailed discussions outside of
Exactly.
council and have them all come to us. And we've already put things to that committee on their list. That is what this committee is, that committee is designed for, so.
Here's what I would recommend, though, because I know we don't have that committee established yet.
October. It'll-
Right. I think what we need to do, though, I think this is kind of a more imminent issue because we have school starting in August. So my desire would be that we have the, whatever alternative that we're going to try out in place for the start of school. So we can have, you know, that going forward for this fall semester and
I think the
however long.
recommendation here, though, is put a timeline on it. So if your thought is, you know, you want to get the transportation, we want to kick it to them, they're going to be in October, you want someone school, let's say we reevaluate this in December. So just put it, you know, whatever it is, just put a timeline on it so that everybody knows. I think that's the recommendation.
Okay, so then my recommendation would be to table this agenda item until January 2025.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table
Yeah,
to
hold on a
postpone
second.
first right now.
Dan, so table and postpone.
It's not a table. Table is if you're going to take it up in the same meeting. So if you want to postpone it, you
Postpone.
can either postpone it indefinitely or you can postpone it to a date certain. Either one of those are fine options. You can also include a recommendation that it be referred to the TSAC if you want it to, but it's not, those aren't exclusive. Doing something now as well as making a formal referral to the TSAC in October all of those things are still options. If you're going to do some of the measures that the mayor suggested and you want those in place before school starts, and Scott needs to chime in on this, you may need a called meeting in order to pass something to implement temporary speed limits and stop signs so that they can be enforced.
Okay.
We can't just put them up there and not have any enforcement, or if that's your intention, so.
Okay, so then I will clarify that I would like to
Hold on a second.
postpone.
So you made a motion to postpone.
Right.
Without it, and it was seconded. Can she withdraw? even though it was-
She can withdraw it or amend it.
Or amend it.
Okay, I will make an amended motion to postpone this agenda item indefinitely.
Okay, do I have a second?
Again, I will second it because I would like to have some discussion on it.
Okay, and so we have,
Discuss, this is the time.
so we have an amended motion to postpone indefinitely on the table that's been made and seconded. Any other discussion on it?
That's why Chesley made the second, because she wanted to discuss it.
Okay.
Well, I do have just some comments because, you know, I've been absent for a bit here and haven't had a chance to do that. I agree with a lot of what was said today, and I agree a lot with what the mayor said and also Emily. There's a lot of streets here within our neighborhoods that are used for cut-throughs, and I will throw this out there. I live in the back 40, and I live on Rolling Acres Trail. I'm on. And we have traffic that cuts through from 3351 through Meadow Creek Trail to Rolling Acres to go to the school. And I happen to be the corner street at the stop sign. So I can tell you, most of the time during school, I cannot get out of my driveway to go to work because people definitely don't want me to make a left turn. Is it a safety hazard? Yes. Do I get school traffic? Yes. I'm checking all the boxes of what was said. Is my street narrow? Yes. Does my street have shoulders? No. Is it winding? Does it go straight into a drainage ditch? All of the above, yes. My boys, when they went to Fair Oaks Elementary, got off the bus and very closely almost got hit by a car with the sign out on the bus. So was it a safety issue? But as a parent, I teach my kids to look both ways and not play in the street. And so I don't agree with closing a street because there is a safety issue. I think we need to go out and look for other options and other reasons, because I think we have very similar safety issues all throughout the city. But, you know, if we jump to this, now is everybody in the back 40 going to say, let's close off Meadow Creek Trail, let's close off Rolling Acres, because we all know it's now the newest cut through to Bernie. So are we going to continue to just close off roads to all residents because there's issues? And so that's the discussion I'd like to see happen.
You want to postpone it indefinitely? Because I think that's the motion.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
Yes.
The comments were going to be made
Yeah.
either way. So we have,
Can I comment?
Oh.
Okay,
do you want to talk about the overall issue?
yeah. So whenever
Okay.
that's
Yeah,
appropriate.
so, all right, so we had a motion, and we had amendment to the motion. So any comments on the amendment, which is to postpone indefinitely? All in favor of,
I have a comment
on the amendment?
on the amendment. I think we need a date certain, not indefinite. I think we need to pick a date, otherwise this thing just sits. And I don't mind postponing it, but I think we need to have some kind of time frame. Got a lot of data already. We've accumulated a lot of data. We have a lot of anecdotal data. You know, we've got scientific data. I don't know what much more data we'll have will come from your alternative, ideas that might come. I even have one myself. So I think we prefer to have a date, because we can always change it later. We can say we want to extend that time for consideration, but I prefer to have a date to go forward if we could do that.
Can I comment? The reason I chose indefinitely as opposed to a date is because I don't know how long it's going to take for whatever options we end up looking at and deciding on. How long is it, what is that time frame going to look like? We can always ask at any time, if it is indefinite, we could always come and ask for something to be put onto the agenda as an agenda item at the next meeting, or the next meeting, or the next meeting. Just postponing it indefinitely allows us to do that, as opposed to if I put a date of, the first meeting in January of 2025, then we're not going to see it before that. You know what I mean? And so I think having this indefinite, open-ended option is going to allow us to have the flexibility to be able to bring it back when it is necessary. And to your comment about the data, what more data? We don't have any data on these other options. We have zero data on these other options. We have data on the closure, really. That's it.
Yeah, I was referring to the data we already had. The only additional data would be to look at what alternatives might do.
Right.
That's where I was.
And that's the purpose.
That's where I was going. So then why do we need a motion? Why don't we just not approve this and then keep it on the, for us to consider? I mean, what's the point of postponing? We're not, we are.
Difference is that we haven't directly disapproved this, not approved it.
Fair enough, okay.
And so we're basically taking it off, putting it on the shelf for a future time that we can bring it back to review it. I agree with the point that Emily's making. I don't know that we can come up with a specific time to postponement to. I'd also agree that this issue is not going to go away.
Mm-hmm.
And so it will be there, whether it gets referred to the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee or we bring it back to council, that item will be there. And it'll also be an opportunity that any council member can request any item to be put on an agenda, and all you'd have to do is ask to bring this back up. So I'm okay with the postponement of indefinite.
Okay.
My point of view. Anybody else? So we have an amendment to the motion to postpone indefinitely. Any other discussion, comments?
Scott,
We're on the last motion, right? Just so I.
get the amended,
So we have a motion, we have a motion and an amendment. I'm trying to get to the amended motion. Okay, so we have an amendment to the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Okay, the motion has been amended. The amended motion on the table now is to postpone indefinitely. Any other comments on it? Ruben, you want to make?
Yeah, I got directed, and I know Ms. Graham made comments. I forget which meeting it was. I was directed to comments online, I guess, that I live on Noble Ark. So I just wanted to make it very clear. I live on the complete opposite end. I measured it, I'm approximately 3/4 of a mile away from the intersection. I've never had a traffic safety issue or observed one on my end of that neighborhood. I was oblivious to the fact that there was a traffic safety issue on the other end. It's really, everyone says Noble Ark, it's really Calcalo to Noble Ark to Dietz. That's that little stretch where this is the issue. So I just wanted to make that very clear in case there's some suggestion that I have some sort of bias or this directly affects me. It does not. In fact, I think a closure inconveniences me because it takes away my access to Dietz. And so I just wanted to make that clear. That way there's no other comments or suggestions to the otherwise that I can't be objective. One thing on Greg's comment about stop signs, when this whole came up, I did go observe during school times when it was open, and I think it's a volume issue, not a speed issue. And so my only question is, if there is a three-way stop, I think the effect is that backs up traffic from Calcalo to Fair Oaks and, Noble Ark to Dietz. And so instead of them flowing through that yield and going every which way, now they're stopping, there'll be lines of cars at that intersection. So while I'm in favor of the best alternative to make, a good safety decision, I think we need to take a close look at what that might do. But obviously, we'll look at alternatives, but I just wanted to put that out there.
Good point. Thanks, Ruben.
can I say some,
Go ahead.
are we making like overall comments now?
Yes.
Okay.
We have a motion on the table.
Well, I guess the motion is really to postpone. I mean, the reason we're postponing is we're not want to discuss it. We could have approved the motion to discuss the ordinance, but we didn't. We approved a motion not to talk about the ordinance. That is what you're proposed. So that's what I'm saying is we could have done a motion and for the purpose of discussion and then move to postpone, but we didn't. We never made the motion, so we're not even talking about the ordinance right now.
Well, I think I can talk about why I want to postpone it.
How about that? Okay.
So, the reason and the purpose that I wanted to postpone this is because I do think that we need to do a little bit more homework on this before we go to the nuclear option of closing down a road, especially to go to Chesley's comments where, we've got Saddle Song over here that people cut through to avoid Ralph Fair. We've got Meadow Creek Trail. The list goes on and on and on. And so my reason for not wanting to take this up now is because I don't think we're prepared. I don't think we've done all the homework that we should be doing. And I think that we owe it to our city to make sure that we're making the best decision that we can for our residents. And in order to do that, I think we have to consider other options. And so that's why, you know, I feel like the best thing right now is to postpone this until we have done all of our homework.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm was not necessarily in favor of it, but I would support postponing it, but I have some concerns. I'm hearing council try to be traffic engineers and come up with solutions. As an engineer, I have a problem with that. I would rather, if we're going to do this, let's have the professionals come up with ideas. Let's give them ideas and have them do that. And we have a committee that does that. And that's what the Traffic Advisory Safety Committee is supposed to be. And it does take into account all the other things that we have to talk about. That was why it was designed. So while I understand your concern about going fast, I also don't want us to design roads as volunteer council members when we have professionals. And I would rather that happen and send it to the committee that's designed to do that. If we want to give ideas for them to consider, that's great, but I don't think it's worth our council's time for us to have internal workshops to design a road. So I just want to caution that I don't want it to go in that direction. I will support postponing for the purposes of deferring to the Traffic Advisory Safety Committee.
I was never suggesting that we should be traffic engineers. We had a presentation by our traffic engineering firm. One option that was presented was an option that I suggested to him to look into. And I think we can make suggestions to them, have them look into it, provide us with these options. And that option that I provided, he agreed would reduce traffic 95%. Now, I understand there's issues with it and we didn't like it, but that's just what I'm suggesting is not for us to say, here's the answer, but we have these ideas. Let's go to the expert, have him vet it. And if we can do it, and if it's something that he can present to us, like at the next meeting or something, to try, I mean, the turnaround on my suggestion was really fast.
Yeah, I think
So-
the proposal was really that moving forward, that we find alternatives. We could find alternatives, but how do we process them? Laura's making the comment that we hand them over to the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee.
Right. I do have a question, if I may ask. If we do postpone taking this up, what happens with Noble Ark? Does the temporary closure end?
From my perspective, yes. We've had a temporary closure that I authorized at the end of this. Temporary closure for 7 months now, with the intention of bringing back an ordinance or a measure on or about this time. I'm hearing now that we want to look at more options, postpone indefinitely the proposed ordinance, which would close it. With that, I believe that we owe it to the residents and to the school district to bring up, to have a solution or a decision, temporary or otherwise, in place in time for the school year. So that my intention would be to reopen the intersection prior to August 12th, which I believe is the beginning of the school year, with proposed alternative traffic control measures that we can bring back to this body at the next meeting. I'd like to bring those up for discussion at the next meeting, have council consider them, along with a reopened road by August 12th. That's my goal.
So I guess I would kind of, maybe kind of a slight deviation from what Laura suggested, support the postponement with the idea that we're going to go to our traffic experts and ask them for some alternative traffic control measures, or whatever you call it, to come back to the next meeting with. Is that a possibility? I know that's not the motion, but I'm just saying that that's kind of my intent.
Right. So,
Really a recommendation for a future agenda item is what you're making, and probably,
Right.
because we're kind of getting off topic here, is, we're talking about the future of it, when we're really focused right now on are we going to close the road or not? That was really the
Great.
agenda item for
We are,
tonight.
but in that vein, I need to let the council and others know what the
In that
immediate
co-
future
right.
that this decision holds. So I want to make perfectly clear how that process would look over at least the next.
Month?
Or-
Just one question, and I'll just, so following up on that comment, what can you do as city manager without council approval? I know this is coming to council because you need an ordinance, and we have to approve this, but there are things that you can do that doesn't require council approval, and what are those things regarding roads?
And I have to harken back to my discussion with the city attorney when this started, but essentially I have the authority to authorize temporary traffic control measures or closures as needed for public safety, construction, other items of the like.
So you
For a
don't necessarily
permit-
have to come back and get our approval to do those temporary measures,
Correct.
unless you feel like it's controversial enough that you need
I
direction.
certainly can do that. I don't,
Yes.
on a temporary measure, I don't necessarily have to. For a permanent change, closure, stop signs, et cetera, those have to be approved by council.
So, Scott, if I understand correctly, your plan would be to open it in time for school, but have some sort of alternative traffic safety measure in place?
That's correct.
Okay.
This may be for Dan, but in order for PD to go ahead and enforce it, it has to be via ordinance. If we're gonna put up stop signs,
Fine. But there's other measures you could take. You could put up signs, you could put up other things that aren't, that just say slow or whatever, but it's not enforceable, you know? There's things not enforceable you could do. Yeah.
Is there a way to make like if we say we lower the speed limit, can we approve a temporarily so that it's enforceable during that temporary period? Or is it, how do we do that?
Yes, that's possible as well.
Okay.
Ma'am, did you have comments? We covered it all and, okay. Anything else? Okay, we have an amended motion on the table to postpone indefinitely this consideration item. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion from council? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. Thank you all. And good discussion. I appreciate everybody's comments that were made during it. Anything, Scott, else that, well, we can cover it at the end. If anybody needs to bring up an agenda item that we need to place on a future agenda, just let me know when we get to that item. That completes the consideration items that we had on the agenda tonight. We do have one workshop item, which is related to the 2024-25 budget. And we have our budget workshop tonight. And we'll have a general presentation, our city secretary, municipal, and the utility budgets.
Yes, good evening. I am Summer Fleming, Director of Finance. So yes, tonight's budget workshop, you'll hear from the city secretary and municipal court administrator on their proposed budgets, which are the final departments in the general fund to present to council, followed by the first presentation of the utility fund proposed budget. I just wanted to give an update on where we are in the budget process. So after tonight, the next workshop will be August 1st as a markup session where council will be able to ask any follow-up questions of staff and make additions or removals to the proposed budget. We'll have a good idea of where the calculated tax rates are going to land. However, I don't anticipate the final calculated tax rate worksheet to be completed until the August 15 meeting. At that August 15 meeting, we'll be able to recap the budget inclusive of any changes from the markup session. We'll recap the capital budget and consider a resolution setting the maximum tax rate council will consider. And then on August 19th, the city manager will file the proposed budget with the city secretary's office. And then we'll have a public hearing on the proposed budget and tax rate at a special meeting in September. So we are still on track to approve the budget and tax rate ordinances at the regularly scheduled meeting on September 19th. But tonight, I'll start with the general fund overview. So we have received, well, You can click to the next one. We have received preliminary values. Now, where am I? Sorry. With the largest increase in Bexar County. Total value dropped from 9.4% increase as presented at the June 20th meeting down to an 8.8% increase over prior year's values. Is it working now? Thanks. There have been a few changes to the budget since the last workshop. Revenues increased $42,391 for updated utility management fee, and total expenses increased a little over $3,300 for the few items noted on the slide. With those changes, the budget now shows a surplus of $533,602 after capital outlay and fund transfers. Now, looking at the projected ending fund balance with this proposed budget, much of that surplus is adding into the unallocated portion of fund balance. The city manager is continuing to meet with departments to review personnel and capital requests based on that remaining budget surplus available for allocation. So are there any questions on the budget timeline or the overview before we start with the department presentations?
Summer, maybe not for you. You decided on the dates for the special meetings yet?
I don't believe we
I know we had
have.
some discussion, but I don't know that we put anything out to council yet for alternates.
Had some discussion on it. We're looking at alternatives due to the timing of the public hearings that I think Summer will get into next time. We're but tentatively looking at an early start on
Okay.
second reading at our regular meeting of the 19th.
Just wanted to give council a heads up what we were looking at time-wise. I think it was September 12th is the...
Thursday, September 12th, and there is a planning and zoning committee meeting or commission meeting that night as well, so we would likely have to do an early start on that one.
If there's no other questions, we'll start with the city secretary's department proposed budget.
Good evening. Christina Petrocchio, City Secretary for the Fair Oaks Ranch. The City Secretary budget is $303,815. Majority of that budget for our department is personnel. 25% are for services and 1% for supplies, maintenance, and operation. Majority of our budget is from the general fund, with only 1% coming from the utility fund. As you can see, again, we have some increase this year compared to last year regarding personnel. Services are remaining flat, supplies, maintenance, operations, capital outlay, and thus total city secretary totals are increasing slightly. But ultimately, there's no significant change to the city secretary budget. And that's all I have.
Questions? Thanks, Christina.
You're welcome.
Good evening, Council. Ricardo Bautista for the Court Administrator for the Municipal Court. Here to present you all on Municipal Court's budget for this upcoming fiscal year. We do have a proposed municipal court budget of $267,671, up from $251,974 of this year. This is a 6.2 increase. The budget is 100% in the general fund. Personnel covers 63% of the budget, services 30%, and supplies, maintenance and operations is 7%. Changes to the budget. Most of it is remains the same. There is an increase in personal. Services are flat. We do have an increase in supplies, maintenance, operations. And total, we do have an increase in the municipal court budget. Budget highlights. The court technology includes a request for an additional laptop for a backup cashier on court days, and a microphone array to increase the audio quality of trials, hearings. that could be required if in the future we do become a court of record. Funds for these requests will come from the court restriction fund of court technology. That pretty much includes the court's budget for this upcoming fiscal year. Do you guys have any questions?
Good. Thanks, Ricardo.
Thank you. Have a good day.
All right, so similar to the general fund, we'll move on to the utility fund, and I'll do an overview of the proposed budget, and then Grant will give a more detailed presentation on budget requests and new programs. So overall, the utility operating expenses are increasing 10%, most notably for the addition of a water tank maintenance program that Grant will speak to. The personnel costs include cost of living adjustment, merit, and shared costs for a communications manager. And this budget also incorporates the issuance of certificates of obligation to advance capital projects in the approved 5-year CIP. This is a snapshot of the current utility rates and fees for this fiscal year for 23-24. And then the proposed utility rates for the fiscal year 24-25 budget. So while there's no proposed changes to volumetric rates for water or wastewater, there are changes being proposed for some of the fees. The surface water fee is the cost of water distributed by GBRA. That is increasing from $15.23 to $15.90 per month. This is due to a cost increase directly from GBRA. The water debt service fee has a proposed increase of $16.51 per month. That fee is calculated by taking the annual debt service payment divided by the number of connections on July 1st. And the water capital fee has a proposed decrease of $4.69 per month. So the net change in those three fees for the water utility equals an increase of $12.49 per month. And then wastewater debt service fee, the proposed increase is $14.88 per month, and the wastewater capital fee would decrease $4.51 per month. So that's a net increase of $10.37 a month for wastewater fees. Now, the debt service and the capital fees are dependent on the capital budget and the proposed debt service payment schedule. Christina, sorry. So as proposed, the budget includes $5.74 million in operating expenses, supported by $6 million in operating revenues for a combined operating income of $262,488. At the utility service level, you can see the figures between water and wastewater. And then operating income is calculated before accounting for non-operating revenues and depreciation. So with this budget, the wastewater utility is showing a slight operating loss. Operating expenses for the wastewater are increasing 9% over the prior year, and currently we have wastewater residential revenues increasing 2% over this current year's projected revenues. This was the first year that we implemented a volumetric rate based on each user's winter average. The rate implemented has come very close to covering operational costs, which was the goal. Once there's been a full year of this new rate system in place, we can reevaluate, but for now it's trending in the right direction. So in analyzing the costs of running the utility's day-to-day operations, it became important to show the operating revenues separate from non-operating revenues since they have specific uses and effects on net position. So the non-operating revenues include impact fees, which can only be used to pay for impact fee eligible capital projects, capital fees, which are charged to utility customers to fund capital projects, and the debt service fee, which is charged to utility customers to pay the annual debt service payment. Interest earnings are considered non-operating revenues since it's not generated from the utility's primary business activities. However, unlike the other revenues just mentioned, interest earnings can be used for any lawful expense. So when you combine the non-operating activities, which totals $1.36 million, with the operating income of $262,488, it adds a little over $1.6 million to the utility's net position. So with the proposed budget, the utility is increasing its investment in capital assets and increasing the debt service reserve with that fee collected to make the annual debt payment. We have increases in the water and wastewater capital reserves and an increase in the equipment replacement fund to save for future replacement. Are there any questions on the utility budget overview? Yes, sir.
What is the impact to the customer for the water fee changes per month? And then what is the impact to the wastewater customer all in with all these changes per month?
So for water, it would be $12.49 per month, an increase,
Okay.
$12.49 per month. And wastewater, $10.37 per month. For a user who has both water and wastewater, it would be $22.86 per month or $274.32 per year.
And this is before consideration of COs and stuff for other capital improvements on our wastewater, or?
No, this includes the issuance of certificates of obligation for the approved
Okay.
5-year CIP. So
Okay.
this is all in, yes.
So the impact to the customer here would be approximately $23 a month if we operate on the current schedule and plan that we have in our capital plan.
Yes.
Okay.
So we see that in the debt service reserve line? Is that it? That's the certificate of obligation payment?
Yes. That would be the debt service fee that we charge the utility users that comes in, and we have to have it reserved to make that debt payment. That's
Got
one
it.
of the bond covenants.
Okay.
What, Summer, do you know what that average percent increase is to the homeowner that has both? Like this $23 a month, what their average bill is? Do we have a feel for, is that going to be a 5% impact to the homeowner, 20%, 10%? Do we know?
I don't know that right now. I could bring that back at the next workshop.
Okay. Thank you.
If there's no other questions, Grant will go into more detail on the water and wastewater proposed budget.
Good evening, Council. Grant Watanabe, Public Works Director for the city again, and I'll be presenting the proposed budget for FY25. So starting with operating expenses, currently GBRA water makes up about 60% of the water we distribute and consume, and it's not surprising that the biggest operating expense on the water side is GBRA fees. That's followed by personnel, maintenance and operation, and then services. And then on the wastewater side, biggest chunk there is personnel, and that's followed by maintenance and operation and services. So looking at changes of two expenses when you compare the proposed budget to the current year budget, like Summer mentioned before, the biggest change there is in the services column. It's a big jump, and I'll get into the details later on why we do need to look at that and really consider that increase. There's more modest increases on the wastewater side, and I'll cover a lot of this in the next two slides. So first of all, looking at water budget highlights, the personnel costs include the addition of a communications manager, the expected COLA and merit increases, as well as a 1.7% increase for the water staff. The big item and the big change again for this proposed budget is the addition of a 10-year tank maintenance contract. So the city currently has 7 ground storage tanks, 2 at Elmo Davis, 2 at Plant 2, 2 at Plant 3, and 1 at Plant 5. All of these require regular inspection, cleaning, and maintenance to meet TCEQ requirements. And it's recommended that we recoat the exterior of the tanks every 10 years and then clean and recoat the interior of these tanks every 15 years just due to the harsh sun and the Texas climate. Now, looking back at our records, the last time we even touched these tanks was 2010, and some of these tanks haven't been touched since 2004. So some of them are way past due. And if you remember, we did have some tank rehab projects as part of our CIP. I think it was part of Elmo Davis Tank 1 and 2 rehab. We estimated that to cost about $400,000 as an alternative to planning and budgeting and taking on debt for CIP projects. What's being proposed is a long-term contract with a vendor to take care of all of our tank maintenance needs. They would include not only the cleaning and the inspection, but also the coatings. And if TCEQ requirements change in the next 10 years, they would also make those modifications to those tanks to meet those new requirements. That's all part of this proposed contract. The estimated cost over a 10-year term is $207,000 per year. There are also schedules for 15 years or 20 years. But what we'd like to propose at this time, because we haven't done this before, is just a 10-year contract, which is the minimum, I believe, that they'll enter into with a city. Some other budget highlights on the water side include, again, like I mentioned, an increase in GBRA's fees, an increase for the general liability insurance, and a small increase for software costs. Yes, sir.
How many tanks do we have?
7 large ground storage tanks. We have several smaller hydro tanks.
So this 200,000 a year would cover all of those tanks?
Maintenance, inspection, cleaning for all 7 tanks over 10 years.
If we were to add a tank or anything, would it be included in there? Is it set by number of tanks or just by city service?
Right, then we'd have to modify the contract to add an 8th tank, but we certainly can do that.
Is this a pretty common thing that cities have or utilities have, these maintenance contracts?
For the vendor that we're proposing, they have several reference cities, and we checked out all of their references, and their performance there is, I guess they're, what am I trying to say? Came out very well. They're was rated very well.
I do appreciate the movement, the continuous movement that staff is doing towards preparing for maintenance instead of reactionary large projects because we weren't maintaining. I see that across the board, and I really appreciate that because I feel like we haven't been doing that, and now we have gigantic projects to fix things that if we would have maintained, wouldn't have had that problem. So thank you for bringing that forward.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a possibility that it'll increase a certain percentage each year, or is it kind of set and you divided it by the 10 years, et cetera?
It's set initially. Any escalation is already built into the contract already, but it's been designed to pay about approximately the same amount over the 10 years.
10 years long contract period. Is there a way to do a 5-year contract or something shorter so that we have a little more control over that? How does that impact the cost?
Then the cost each year would be much higher than the proposed $200,000 per year. Well, because
Have
a
a
lot of
10-year
these
cycle for the maintenance, so that because you go through, and Steve can explain this a lot better than me, but 1 year you do an inspection, another you do kind of a cleaning, and then on year 5 or something you do the
Okay.
paint. So it's kind of a 10 to 15-year cycle. That's why they
Okay,
propose it in those chunks.
thank you. And sorry, I didn't have my mic on, so.
Say it all over again. No, I'm joking.
Sure. I have just a short question. The water issue that we had earlier with the pump, do these fees take into account the increased cost, if any, from having to get more water now that we aren't getting as much water from that one well? You know what I'm talking about?
This contract is represented just the condition of the tank itself, so not the pumps or the electrical or anything. It's just the actual.
The physical has nothing to do with the water itself.
Not this water or the pumping of said water. It's just the tank.
Got it.
But what about the $34,000, the GBRA fees? Is that from that well?
That's what I was talking
Oh,
about.
I'm sorry.
No, that's not related to increasing our take from GBRA. It's just their standard increase at the beginning of each fiscal year for them.
Oh, that's built in already? That GBRA?
It's not adopted yet. It's proposed. I forget what the percentage is, but that's reflected here.
So clarify that, please, again? I'm not clear what the
So-
GBRA.
GBR's rates increase every August or September.
Okay,
So we're budgeting for that increase
okay.
for next year.
Got it, okay.
Which is not associated to an increase in water.
Right, it's not a change
This is just
in-
an increase with the current contract.
with the current volume that we're currently taking.
And the amount that we draw will be within the current contract. We're not gonna have to go more. Okay.
No.
Got it. Got it.
All right, moving on to wastewater budget highlights. Again, slight increase in personnel costs due to the addition of the communication manager, as well as increases for the general liability insurance and then software costs. We do have one item in our funded operational capital as part of the budget, and that's a VFD upgrade for well 26. This year, and it was actually part of tonight's consent agenda, was award of a contract to upgrade 4 other different wells with VFDs, and that leaves this one single well as a last well without a VFD. This well is still on a rotor phase converter, but we'd like to put on a more efficient VFD, so this would take care of that last well. And we do have 2 items that are not currently funded. The first is a water tank trailer. This water tank trailer is used by all of our divisions, water, wastewater, and maintenance. It's used by water to hose down and clean up mud and dirt after leak repairs. It's used by our wastewater team to wash down lift stations, and it's also used by our maintenance team to irrigate newly seeded areas after they've done some drainage maintenance. The current trailer's 25 years old. We've had several leaks in this tank, and both the chassis and the axle of this old trailer is pretty rusted, so it's in poor condition. So we're asking that this be added to the budget to replace this piece of equipment. And then secondly is the addition of a new message board trailer. These message board trailers are in high demand. They're used by many departments, again, by water to put out outage notifications for those who don't follow social media. It's used by maintenance whenever we close roads to do either our new fog seal or crack seal or other types of repairs. It's used by our city secretary to make sure everybody knows about elections and where they're being held, and it's also being used by the city to make sure people remember there's no fireworks during 4th of July. And it's also used to advertise for town hall events and many others that come up over the course of the year. So with a lot of large projects being kicked off over the next few years, we foresee the need for additional message board trailers to make sure everybody is aware of the road closures and the new detour routes associated with that. And the cost here is $20,000. It would be split with the general fund. All right, and that's the end of my presentation.
Any questions? Do we have any questions from anybody here tonight on any portion of the budget presentations? Okay. Thank you, Grant. And completes the only workshop item that we have, and we have one report tonight, Christina, which is an update on filling our boards, committees, and commissions. Not cooperating?
Apologize, I'm having challenges pulling it up. Maybe I'll try a different route. There we go. If the PowerPoint doesn't want to work, I'm going to use Excel. Christina Pachocchio, City Secretary, Fair Oaks Ranch. We had 13 current members who are on our boards and commissions who are up. Their terms ended this year. Of 13 members, we have 10 who have decided to put their name in the hat and hope that they will be selected again. We also have 7 new members, as approved tonight, for our Traffic Safety Advisory Committee. So that leaves us with 10 positions to fill. As I mentioned before, there are, no, I'm sorry. There were 20 positions to fill, no, 13 positions to fill. And 10 of which are being requested to stay, and 7 for filling. I said that completely wrong. I apologize.
You got all the numbers. There were 3 from our current boards that we're going to have to fill.
Yes, thank you very much. 3 members that need to get filled, should you choose, since they requested to not be on the board anymore, assuming that you allow the others to stay on. And then we have the 7 new positions. And I have on the screen those positions where they fit. So right now, the openings would be 2 for CIAC committee and 1 for the ZBOA committee, and then the 7 for the TSAC. And the deadline is August 6th. We've only received 1 application to date, and that person was interested in either the P&Z or the CIAC. So to summarize, assuming that you do accept those people that wish to maintain their current roles, we need to fill 3 of those roles and then the 7 new positions.
And I believe I've seen notices already going out that we're advertising for people to submit.
Right, we have been posting on our social media. We also have the advertisements on our website. Tomorrow we'll be pushing out the TSAC information and trying to get some people for that.
I have some volunteers that.
I was like, in the past, when we've had slow response, it's been helpful for council and active committee members to reach out to either people that have reached out to us about items on each of these things and encourage them to contact.
Okay. So
For
again,
nominating
August
John
6th is the deadline.
So we have, what'd you say the deadline was, the 9th? 9th of August?
August 6th.
August
is the
6th.
9th is the deadline.
Term starts September?
It will start, well, no, they don't start until fiscal year begins, so
Okay.
October 1st.
Got it.
And so I think what we looked at is trying to find 2 dates to conduct interviews. So we have 10 people that potentially, 10 spots that we need to fill. So potentially at least 10 people that we'd have to interview, and hopefully maybe more. And we usually offer up 2 dates so that individuals can deconflict whatever date works best. And I believe we're looking at already scheduled council meeting dates, but doing a special meeting early to do the interviews at. Nothing's set in stone yet, but just to give you an idea, that's what we're looking at.
And I know, Greg, while we don't have a lot of interest, there's been times in the past where 10 applicants are up for reappointment. At some point in the process, we either decide we're just gonna accept them and not do an interview, or choose to interview. Most of them want to be interviewed if they're not gonna be caught in that, because they wanna be able to explain why they should stay.
I think in the past, though, we've just accepted those that wanted to stay.
We've done a mix. It depends on the year, and it depends on how long people have been on. So, I don't know who these people are, because I don't have the names and how long they've served on the committee, but that type of stuff may go into. If they're on the first term, that if they've been on for 5 terms, maybe that's a good
We'll be coming back once we've met the deadline and give an update on the specific applicants and those that have requested to stay on. So you'll be able to make a more informed decision and determine exact dates for interviews should you go that route.
Probably we'd be looking at what the August 15th council meeting of bringing something back. By that time, we'll have, well, the deadline for applications will have passed.
Yes.
So we should have some idea where we stand. And then we can make a decision then on, do we want to interview those that would like to stay on the board? Or do we just accept them and just do interviews of new candidates? But we could do all that with a item on the 15th. I think that'll give us enough time.
We would just,
And then after that, it would just be conducting the interviews and then doing the selections.
In the meantime, can the secretary send to us the names of the people that said yes and the names that said no, just so that we have that list? I mean,
you'd like that in advance? I could
just
do
email
that.
it to us. I mean, we need to
I
have a
can do that.
discussion on it.
Okay.
Gladly.
What else?
I think that's it.
Any other questions? Thanks, Christina. I know it's a tough area to manage. So thanks for all you do in keeping our boards, committees, and commissions straight. That completes all the items that we had on the agenda tonight. Do we have any announcements from any council members that they'd like to make? No? Okay. I have 3 announcements. Bulk trash and brush pickup is about to start. We'll have Sector 1 starts the week of 5 August, Sector 2 starts the week of 12 August, and Sector 3 will start the week of 19 August. If you have a question on which sector that you are in, please call City Hall and they can describe it to you or tell you what it is. And you can start putting out your bulk trash and brush items the week prior to your scheduled pickup week. Second item is SAWS is continuing to work on the Fox Falls sewer line. You can see it as it runs along I-10 and runs along the Dominion, but it also crosses the southern portion of Fair Oaks Ranch. And it's why we've had the road closures on the Parkway up by Frostbank and CVS. The inbound portion of Fair Oaks Parkway was opened back up this morning, and while they opened it up, they also closed the southbound portion, was closed today. It is closed right at the intersection with Leslie Pfeiffer. There's a lot of signs there that will direct you up to the Leslie Pfeiffer, and you'll get on the access road and you can get to I-10. But also, it does provide you access if you need to get to Frostbank or CVS, till you can get there from the access road. And I don't know, Grant or Scott, was it 3 weeks? What, was that the anticipated, somewhere around there, 2 to 3 weeks is the anticipated closure time for?
I think the sign today,
20 days.
I saw a sign today, I think it said August 7th.
Okay. The last announcement I have, well, it's not really a laughing matter. We've had rain. We haven't had a lot of rain, and we are still in an extreme drought condition. And, you know, Canyon Lake still continues to hit record lows. And the honest message I'm trying to give everybody is we need to take this seriously. We are in an extreme drought. We need to take care of the water that we currently have, and we need to use it for essential purposes for what we need for living. We cannot waste the precious resource that we have. And I don't know how to stress it enough for people to understand that, you know, we're in stage 2 of our drought contingency plan right now. And we only have 3 stages. If we go to stage 3, that is our emergency condition. And really, we need to do what we can today to conserve the water that we have to keep us from going to stage 3. and just need to get the message out. I need residents to tell residents that we need to do the right things, abide by the watering schedules, and use water for essential purposes. And please help me get the message out. Scott, any other announcements?
One quick update, Mr. Mayor. As everyone knows, we had a highly publicized planned power outage last week, followed by a also publicized postponement of said outage. We have been working closely with CPS and TxDOT on that situation when it's planned there will be a planned outage later on. Working with them this week. We've talked to them twice this week. Their CPS especially is working to greatly reduce the impact of said outage, so I think that's good news. But I expect it to be far fewer than 1,300 households that are affected once that is rescheduled. So I'm hoping to have more information for you next week, but just bear in mind right now that there will still be one, but it should be less dramatic. That's all I had.
Thank you, Scott. And are there any items that any council member would like added to a future agenda? Scott, do we need to take a look at what we talked about with Noble Lark and maybe looking at adding something to a future agenda for discussion on it?
We'll definitely have something for you on August 1st.
Okay.
I'll coordinate with the city attorney on whether we need anything else in the interim after that, but definitely on August 1st.
All right. And that's all we have for requests and announcements. Right now, we have no reason to go to executive session. All right. Christine, anything we missed?
No, sir.
Anything else we need to cover? Scott, anything from your perspective?
Sir?
I have the time now is 8:17, and we are adjourned.